Hi, welcome everybody. I think we'd like to make a start. Welcome everyone to this plenary session. As President of the European Association of Geochemistry, it is my honor to present our awards today to 5 outstanding scientists. And I just wanted to thank people first for submitting nominations this year. It's a very important first step in this entire process, and also to recognize our fantastic EAG Awards nomination and selection committees. So our first award is the Frederick Houtermans Award, which recognizes exceptional contributions made to geochemistry by a member of the younger generation. So we present first the 2025 Houtermans Award to David Beckert from the University of Lorraine, CRPG in France. So David couldn't make it to the Prague meeting last year in 2025, but we're really pleased to be able to honor him this year. Alongside colleagues at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, David developed the sub-per-mil analysis of noble gases in volcanic gases, leading to unprecedented insights into mantle geochemistry and geodynamics. Thanks to noble gas analysis of lunar material, he demonstrated the contribution of comets to the Earth-Moon system. So please join me in congratulating David Beckert for his outstanding achievements. Okay. So, and this year's Houtermans Award goes to Alan Seltzer from University College Dublin. Alan is recognized for his achievements in the fields of hydrology, marine chemistry, climate science, and mantle geochemistry, and in particular, the novel ultra-high precision analytical methods he developed, which led to important recent discoveries in these fields of study. So please join me in congratulating Alan Seltzer for his exceptional contributions. So our second award is the Science Innovation Award, which this year goes to Elizabeth Cottrell from the National Museum of Natural History at the Smithsonian Institution. Elizabeth is presented with the Alfred Ringwood Science Innovation Medal, honoring her work in petrology and mineral physics. Elizabeth is recognized for her innovative and leading contributions in the study of the oxidation state of Earth's mantle through the magmas that it produces and the residues that are left behind. This work has led to transformative scientific advances and catalyzed a renaissance in this field. So please join me in congratulating Elizabeth Liz Cottrell for her remarkable achievement. So our highest honor is the Harold Urey Award, which recognizes outstanding contributions to geochemistry over an entire career. So the 2025 Urey Award goes to Donald Sparks from the University of Delaware. Donald couldn't be in Prague last year, but we're so happy to be able to recognize him this year. Don is a leading scholar in geo and soil chemistry, having contributed widely and deeply to our understanding of reactions at the solid-water interface. He was a pioneer of chemical kinetic and spectroscopic techniques for illuminating reactions within soils and sediments. He helped lead the use of X-ray absorption spectroscopy for discerning metal binding, and later the chemical characteristics of soil organic matter. While being a prolific and insightful scholar, Donald Sparks' advising and mentoring is possibly even more impressive. He's also a prominent leader in the scientific community, taking leadership roles in many societies. So please join me in congratulating Donald Sparks for his exceptional achievements. And this year's URI Award goes to Ray Weiss from Scripps Institution of Oceanography, University of California, San Diego. Ray Weiss's influence on the field of geochemistry over the arc of his career has extended from the ocean floor to the upper atmosphere. His development and application of rigorous and creative geochemical measurements techniques have advanced our understanding of ocean and lake circulation, hydrothermal vent geochemistry, gas solubilities in natural waters, and the global and regional distribution of atmospheric trace gases. His recent atmospheric work has led to numerous discoveries concerning atmospheric composition changes with implications on stratospheric ozone depletion, hydroxyl radical abundance, and global radiative forcing. In addition to his exceptional achievements in science, Ray has mentored graduate students and postdocs who now research and teach atmospheric and oceanic chemistry all around the world. So please join me in congratulating Ray Weiss for his outstanding contributions. Okay, so I'd now like to invite Dominique back to the stage to introduce the plenary speaker.
Hello, everyone. As we begin today's plenary lecture, I would like to acknowledge several sponsors who made this session possible. New Instrument, Norris Scientific, Elemental Scientific, and Agilent. Thank you. That would not have happened without you. It's an absolute honor for me to introduce today's speaker, Cristina Mittermeier. Before she comes to the stage, I want to ask you a question. Think of a place your own research is about, not the system, not the process, the actual ground, the rock, the water, or the ice. When did you last see it? Not in a data set, not on a map. When did you actually last see it? I don't need an answer, but think about it. Cristina Mittermeier is a remarkable individual who embodies the spirit of environmental advocacy. She trained as a scientist first, a degree in biochemical engineering with a focus on marine science in Mexico, before discovering that a camera would carry her message further than the science. She's not only a marine biologist, by training, she's a passionate protector of our ocean, and as you will see, a very powerful storyteller through her photography. Her life's work reflects a deep commitment to conservation that has inspired millions to see the natural world differently. As the visionary founder of the International League of Conservation Photography in 2005, and co-founder of Sea Legacy with Paul Nicklin in 2014, Mitty has spent nearly 3 decades amplifying the voices of the ocean and the people who depend on it. She's a National Geographic explorer and contributing photographer, bringing a rare blend of scientific rigor and artistic brilliance to every frame. Her talent and unwavering dedication have earned her many awards: Smithsonian Conservation Photographer of the Year Award, the Sylvia Earle Award, and also NEMI Award for the documentary photography with Paul Nicklin. In January 2025, she stood before world leader as a cultural leader at the World Economic Forum in Davos and told the room plainly, we have now crossed 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries that define a safe operating space for humanity. Her book, Hope, with a foreword by Robert Redford, drew on 30 years of fieldwork across more than 130 countries, a body of work built on the belief that, in her words, in a time of disconnection, I create to restore belonging, I create to protect what is sacred, I create to remember and to remind others that anything is connected. So today we are privileged to hear from Mitty, whose energy, passion, and creative vision remind us of the profound impact we can have when science and story stand together. She asks that you look and listen. What she's supposed to show you deserves your full attention. Please welcome Mitty Mittermeier.
Good morning. How's everybody? Dominique, thank you so much. She's a tornado. She came into my life and she's kind of like swept me off of my feet. And I understand that I'm not the regular type of plenary that you're used to having. So I'm deeply honored because when I stand in this room, what I see is the career that I would have loved for myself. I want to show you a photograph. This is me exactly 30 years ago in this very conference center attending a conference about fresh water. And that little person is the one that derailed my hopes and dreams of getting a PhD. It was difficult, as many women know, to go to university, get a PhD, and do the whole mothering thing at the same time. So instead, I opted to become a photographer. But it all stems from the same place, the curiosity about our planet, how it works, and how we protect it. Before I tell you what I do and I show you more about my work, I want to show you how I do it. Well, I have built a career for myself that's taken me to some of the wildest places on this planet, and I feel really privileged to have spent at least half of my life underwater, witnessing what I think is the most incredible spectacle on planet Earth, and that is our oceans. And that passion for the oceans really came from books that I read as a child. And when I look out at this room, and I want to tell you that it really gives me a lot of hope and encouragement to know that there's so many smart people working to figure out how our spaceship works. Because the audiences that I normally speak to are just regular audiences, lay people that oftentimes are not thinking about climate, they're not concerned about carbon. Some of them are even climate deniers. I have been in audiences where people have actually stood up and told me to shut up and go home. The audience out there is tough, and I think people are scared. And I'm scared too. So I dedicate my life to try to convey not just the beauty and the wonder of our planet, but also the urgency of what's happening. And I do that through storytelling. One of the great assets that I have is a very large social media following that I accrued during my career at National Geographic. And one way that I work is by mobilizing audiences to take action, especially young people, through petitions and letter signing that we do through campaigns. So I want to show you a campaign that we did in the southern part of Australia. This is southwestern Australia, just south of Perth, and we were there working with the National Park Service of Australia to expand protections for southern right whales, which, as you know, were almost exterminated during the whaling years and are just beginning to make a comeback. These whales are great nomads of the Southern Ocean. They cross the Drake Passage out to Antarctica, and then they come back and they have their babies in places like South Africa and New Zealand and the southern part of Australia. And because they're so fragile, people are not allowed to get in the water with them. But we got a special permit to get in the water with these animals. And the first thing that I discovered is that these whales are not normal. They are incredibly curious, to the point of being aggressively curious. And they're not used to seeing people in the water. So it's an incredible experience. Let me show you this.
You're staring there into the blue, and all you can do is hang on to your camera, and all of a sudden you start to see this glow, this black form, and then it starts to come through the visibility barrier, and it's the mom, and right beside her is her calf. It's like they're swimming out of a painting.
It's coming within 10 inches of your face to ask you, what are you doing here? It's a dance. And sometimes in the dance, you take a stumble. It is one of the most intimidating feelings I've felt in my life. Nothing shows you how small you are on this earth, like a whale.
So I should have died that day. And one of the things that the ocean teaches you is it only has two modes. It's always trying to kill you, and it can only kill you fast or slow. And you better hope that it's fast. We were there to try to push seismic exploration offshore to give these whales a chance, and we won. We were able to galvanize enough public action to actually have a small moratorium. That's how we work, in small moratoriums. But this is the photograph I took of that baby whale that came a little too close to me, and Mom wasn't happy. I don't think she was trying to kill me, but she was just swatting me like a fly, telling me to bug off. The way that you don't want to die in the ocean is slow. So let me take you to the other part of the planet that I do a lot of work on, and that is the Eastern Tropical Pacific, where recently we had a campaign to try to create the first interconnected swimway. We worked with the countries of Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Ecuador to help them expand their existing marine protected areas or create new MPAs to build a connection so that migratory animals would not be caught by the international fishing fleet. So we took our boat, the Sea Legacy 1, across the Panama Canal, and we did diving all over the place. And we ended up in the northernmost part of the Galapagos archipelago in a couple of rocks that are outcrops from the ocean called Darwin and Wolf. This is the last place that you can go before you enter the wide Pacific. And it is a wicked place. It's the open ocean. The currents are tremendous out there. And there's nobody there. They're uninhabited. They're 100 kilometers from the nearest island and 1,000 kilometers from the shore. So we got another special permit to dive everywhere, and it was incredible to spend time in the water with creatures that exist nowhere else. The marine iguanas, which are the only reptile that feeds underwater in the ocean. The endemic Galapagos penguin, which is the northernmost species of penguin. The endemic Galapagos sea lion. All incredible animals and so beautiful. Diving in the Galapagos is a little bit like taking a trip in a time machine, going back in the ocean 50, 100 years ago, the way it should be. It's pretty extraordinary. On the day of this dive, we plunged in off of Darwin, and the currents were wicked. and the water was murky. And within the first 5 minutes, I lost my dive partners. I couldn't see where they went, but I looked at my gauges, and I have a full tank. I know that I have an hour worth of diving. We're professional, so I just thought to myself, I'll do my dive. And it was one of the best dives of my life. At some point, I look below me, and I see the largest whale shark I've ever seen in my life. One of those true oceanic nomadic sharks. I look up, and there's a squadron of hammerheads just flying above me. I just couldn't believe it. It was so beautiful. It was like swimming in a painting. At some point, an hour goes by, and it's time to come out of the water. And so I do my safety stop, I emerge, I look around, and my fellow divers are nowhere to be found. There's no boat. I'm floating there all alone. I thought, they'll come up. 5 minutes go by, and it's fun because sharks are starting to gather around me. And in the beginning, they're just silky sharks, and they're beautiful. And, I have fun. I go around, and I chase them away. But, 10 minutes go by, and they start getting a little rude. They start bumping against me, and 15 minutes, 20 minutes go by. I look around, and there's more and more sharks. And I'm starting to get really worried. I'm looking all around me, and it's getting dark. As I turn around, all of a sudden, I see this. And it is Darwin's Arch. For all of you geologists, you know that this has since collapsed, and it's now called Darwin's Pillars. But back then, the arc was still existing. And it's hit by the last rays of sun in the day. And I thought, oh my God, that's beautiful. And I thought, what the hell? I'm just going to take a picture of it. So I turned my camera, pulled it up, and went click, and my flashes went pop. And I felt like a wave of relief come over me. I thought, this is how I'm going to be saved. And I just started popping those flashes, pop, pop, pop. I thought, I'm going to keep flashing until somebody sees me or until the flashes die. And not 5 minutes had gone by when I see the dinghy come from the horizon just as the sun is setting. I don't want to think about spending the night out in the open ocean by yourself. But you do think a lot about your life when you're in those moments when you're presented with the imminent death. And I thought about my childhood in Mexico. I grew up in one of the largest cities on the planet in a very traditional Mexican family, Catholic, very large, a lot of children, and my parents were professional. My mom actually has a PhD in psychology. My dad is an accountant. He wanted me to be an accountant like him. I had this fascination with animals, and Saurav, I don't know where it comes from. For me, it came from reading pirate books and National Geographic. And I grew up at a time when there was a lot of bias towards boys in many parts of the world. I don't think my father intended to bias towards my brother, but he was the one that got all the cool books and all the fun adventure tales. My sisters and I, we got Barbie dolls. You remember the ones that you had to cut the little dresses and color them? And I think that's where the love of animals come from. So I would beg my mother to please take me to see animals. And so here we are in Lake Xochimilco. This is Mexico City, one of the most polluted lakes in the world, for those of you who've been there. But I swear to you that in my childhood imagination, there were dolphins and manatees all around us. And like Dominique said, I eventually persuaded my father to allow me to go to university and study biochemical engineering. And I wasn't very good at it. I'm terrible at math. So it was a struggle for me to graduate and to actually think about getting a job. But the thing that going to school and studying the ocean did for me was just, I remember the wonder of seeing the ocean for the first time through a microscope and realizing that most of life in the ocean is microscopic and floating out there. And just the diversity of it, for me, it was incredible. When I got married and I had children, it became impossible for me to carry on with my studies, so I decided to become a photographer instead. And I love taking photographs of animals like this. I tell people when I lecture that when you go to the beach and you're tumbled by a wave and you take a big gulp of water, well, what you're drinking is not just seawater. It's a living broth of microorganisms that are the engine that keeps this planet alive. I was very lucky when I was making this big decision as to whether or not to pursue a PhD or become a photographer. And my mom actually helped me. She presented me with this term, ikigai. She actually gave me a book about it. And she said to me, you know, you don't need to find a career, you just need to find what your purpose on this planet is. And she explained to me that Ikigai is something that you find by finding the confluence of 4 things. The thing that you love, which is also the thing that you're good at, very important, the thing that gets you paid. But most people stop here. They never get to the 4th circle, which is, what does the world need? Where can my work actually be good for humanity? And I was lucky that I found the confluence of all those 4 things in my photography and dedicating my life to trying to spark that curiosity in others about what's happening with our planet. I discovered that talking to people about plankton is not very exciting. They really want to hear about big animals. Animals like this. This is a male orca that I photographed in the fjords of northern Norway. Another campaign to try to do a moratorium on seismic exploration in delicate environments where 1,500 orcas come into these fjords following the herring. And the government of Norway has not been very good about legislating the protection of these animals, to the point that now there's hundreds of boats where people can get in the water and swim with these orcas. But on this morning, it's January in Norway. So we get probably between 12 and 15 minutes of daylight, and we are rushing to our dive site when this whale decides to race our boat, and just gave us the most amazing spectacle. Or animals like this. This is greater flamingos in the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, where I come from. And do you guys know what a group of flamingos is called? It's called a flamboyance. And they're amazing. They migrate and they arrive in these shallow, salty lagoons of the Ria Lagartos in the Yucatan. And they do a synchronized dance. You have 1,000 birds that are all doing the same synchronized movements, and it's an amazing thing to watch. They do that thing, and then they do that thing. And they have a gland on their bottom where they secrete carotenoids, which they acquire from their diet of tiny little shrimp. And they take that oil and they rub it all over themselves to make themselves even more pink. They're the only animal in the animal kingdom that wears makeup. They're pretty amazing. Or animals like this. This is a rain wolf. It's an animal that only lives on the coast of British Columbia. It's a subspecies of the timber wolf that lives on the shore, and 90% of its diet comes from the ocean. It waits for the tide to go out, and then it forages for oysters or clams or the odd dead salmon. They're beautiful. They're small, small wolves, but they are very much pack animals. They live in big families. Today, it's shocking to me that the government of British Columbia is doing a wolf call, where they're shooting these animals from helicopters to protect the populations of caribou, which is so silly. And this is the worry, right? This is one of the things that drives me, that the people that are in charge of making public policy decisions have very little understanding about how the spaceship works. In any case, how do we help in a case like this? You can buy a hunting license for $5, and anybody can go on the coast and shoot one of these wolves, which to me is just shocking. So we did a big print sale. We sold our photographs. We raised a ton of money, and we bought every single hunting license in a big tenure in British Columbia. So now if people want to kill a wolf, they have to call me. One of the first things that I discovered when I became a wildlife photographer is that animals, well, they don't always want to have their picture taken, and even when you're trying to help them. But it's worthwhile to make photographs like this, because even the smallest creatures on this planet are incredibly important. They are the building blocks that keep our planet alive. For me, as a wildlife photographer in those early years, what I really wanted was to take my camera underwater. I wanted to be able to take pictures of the ocean. And as marine biologists, you know, for the last century, we've only had access to the coastal areas, to the areas that we can reach with our scuba equipment, and it's just recently that the equipment, that the computational power, that the genetic innovation is allowing us to better understand. But when you're a young photographer and you're broke and it's difficult to get anywhere and you have a household full of children, how do you take your camera into the water? Well, that's one way. I'm sponsored by Sony, and They love this clip. And there's always somebody in the audience that says, was your camera okay? They're not all scientists, surely. But I love being able to take my camera underwater to be able to tell stories like the story of this loggerhead sea turtle. I photographed this animal off the coast of the Azores in Portugal. The water was 10 degrees. It was very cold. We were there looking for blue whales, but on this day, there were no whales. But there were loggerheads basking, trying to get a little warmth. I got in the water, and I was sure that the turtle was going to swim away, but it didn't. It just stayed and allowed me to swim all around. And I could see that on its other fin, it had a tag on its flipper. And that tag told me that this turtle was born in West Palm Beach, Florida. I found it almost 6,000 kilometers from where it was born. And I can just imagine that hatchling getting into the water, catching a ride on the Gulf Stream, all the way up to the North Atlantic. And one day, for reasons only it knows, it'll decide to make a U-turn, and it will swim 6,000 kilometers to the very same beach where it was born, following the magnetic field of the Earth. I like to ask audiences if anybody has that ability. If anybody can read the magnetic field of the Earth. And I know in this room there's some people who can. But generally, it's just to show how mesmerizing animals are and the abilities that they have that we choose to ignore or not understand. I tell people these are our fellow passengers, our fellow engineers on Spaceship Earth. And we would be very smart to try to learn more from them. And people ask me, why the ocean? It's so much easier to be a terrestrial photographer when you can go camping and spend days and days photographing. But to me, the ocean is a source of fascination. It is, of course, the largest and the most important ecosystem on this planet, and it's one that we're just beginning to understand. I like to share with audiences who have never heard the fact that it gives us almost 50% of the oxygen we breathe. And depending on the audience, but the less they know, the more fun it's asking them to hold their breath for half of the time of my lecture, just to illustrate the point of how important it is. And of course, it is biomes like this, seagrass meadows and kelp forests and mangroves that provide a lot of the oxygen. But in reality, it is the multitude of microscopic, gelatinous, almost invisible, transparent creatures like these tiny shrimp sitting on the tentacle of a tiny anemone that make the majority of life in the ocean. And people are always surprised to hear that 80% of life on this planet lives in the ocean. We're just beginning to understand. If you can imagine, up until the 1990s, we didn't have the equipment to actually sift through the ocean to bring these creatures that are so delicate, fragile, invisible, so small, into the surface to do genetic studies on them. It's very new. And now, thanks to Claude, who was talking to me about Claude, and the computational power we have, we're being able to do so much more to understand. But it's creatures like this. We were in Raja Ampat last year, and this is supposed to be one of the highlight dive sites on this planet. I was pretty disappointed because we got there in October, and during the 4 months that we were there, the water temperature increased by almost 4 degrees. And we watched the reef bleach right in front of us. The big fish started sinking deeper into cooler water, and pretty soon there was nothing much for us to photograph. So we started doing night dives, and we are rebreather divers, so we're able to stay underwater many hours and dive without bubbles, which is a lot of fun. At night, it can be a little scary because it's easy to lose your dive buddies when you cannot hear anything or see anything. So we went diving one night, and I have my head under some rock photographing something, and when I look up, my dive buddies are gone. This happens a lot. We are a mixed team. They're doing video, I'm doing photography. They don't like my strobes, so I always end up diving by myself. And then I remember somebody said to me that big crocodiles swim from Australia all the way to Indonesia. And now, as I'm diving in the dark, 100 feet deep, all I can think about is, are there crocodiles here? And pretty soon I start feeling like something is watching me, and when I turn around, sure enough, this tiny little creature is floating right over my head. When I pointed my strobes at it, it got so excited with the light. It started doing this with its tentacles, and the chromatophores in its skin started changing colors. Then it got a glimpse of itself, the reflection on the dome, and it went crazy. And I spent the most amazing half an hour swimming with this tiny squid, playing hide and seek in the dark with him. And I thought, how sad is it that the majority of people will only know him as calamari and will only meet him swimming in mayonnaise? But we're just beginning to understand the role of wildlife in the carbon cycle in the ocean. And the role of whales has become pretty apparent as incredible gardeners of the sea, because these big whales can dive as far down as a couple of kilometers, and they will feed down there on krill or banks of school or whatever creatures are down there that are rich in minerals, and they'll bring all of that to the surface where they defecate, and that poop becomes fertilizer for the plankton, which is pretty important. For people like me who care deeply about animals, it is painful to know that we are losing them so quickly. In the last 10 years, we have lost 50% of the population of gray whales in the Pacific coast. This year alone, over 174 whales have washed up on shore. The influx of fresh water from melting ice in the Arctic, combined with the warming water, is devastating the source of its food, euphausids in the bottom of the ocean. And they're dying of starvation, which is so sad. But for the ocean, 3.5 billion people get 1/5 of the protein from the ocean. It's a pretty important source of well-being for humanity. And it's also part of our medicine cabinet. All sorts of compounds for cancer, for diabetes, for pain come from the ocean. This photograph was taken under icebergs in Antarctica. And, you know, it's not just colorful and beautiful. 1/3 of all the carbon in the atmosphere, and I don't need to say this to people in this audience, is sequestered by living organisms in the ocean. I tell people it's not just the chemical relationship between the atmosphere and the ocean, it's all the creatures that live in there as well. I tell people that, to me, it's mesmerizing to think that the largest migration on planet Earth happens in the ocean every night, where the phytoplankton is close to the surface, where it can do the photosynthesis thing during the day. But at night, from about 1,000 feet, the zooplankton starts coming up to the surface in the largest migration on our planet. They feed on the phytoplankton, and then they go back down in the morning, carrying with them all that carbon and sequestering it in the bottom of the sea. It's the largest carbon pump that we have. Of course, things are changing rapidly for the ocean. In the Arctic, we're losing sea ice. I think 2024 was the least extent of sea ice in the summer months that we've ever had. And it's not just what it means for animals like polar bears, it's the danger of tipping points, for example, in the permafrost. That's pretty terrifying. When I tell people this, they have no idea. I try to explain how the AMOC currents work, how the Antarctic conveyor belt brings warm water from the tropics to the polar regions, and as it's losing its power, the danger that poses for humanity as the Gulf Stream and the jet stream weaken, why we're seeing these weather patterns change. And people look at me with this, glazed look in their eyes, like I'm talking about another planet. The implications are so serious, right? And when I talk to audiences that are more naive about what's happening, I try not to scare the living daylights out of them, because I don't think fear is a powerful motivator, but they do need to know that there is some urgency. Like Dominique said, we already crossed the 7th of the planetary boundaries, Dominique, last year, the acidification of the ocean. And as the ocean is getting warmer, things are changing rapidly in places like the Antarctic Peninsula. Saurabh, you're an Antarctic scientist, you know this. It doesn't snow as much as it rains now, and all that rain mixes up with the guano and creates this pasty mud that when it gets stuck to the feathers of the babies, at night when the temperature drops, they die of hypothermia. To me, it's shocking that we're putting animals like emperor penguins and king penguins in the endangered species list. They used to be okay until just 10 years ago. And of course, tipping points in coral kingdoms as well. Last year, I think it was a year ago, we were in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia when 90% of the reef bleached. It was just football field after football field of white coral. And what I try to say to people, I got a phone call from an executive at Disney, and he wanted me to come and talk to their sustainability team. And I told him, we are in Australia, and this is what we're seeing. It's pretty serious. You know what he said to me? He's like, well, I'm glad that I didn't get my PADI certification. And I was like, see, this is the problem. How is this about you and your diving career? A lot of people depend on coral reefs, not just for food, but also for construction materials. And reefs are seawalls that protect entire countries from the surge of the ocean. When the reef bleaches, it's not just the hard structures, it's animals like anemones too. They're cnidarians as well. And it's very sad to see little Nemo lose its home. But the implications are massive because coral reefs are nursery for about 25% of the biodiversity on the planet, a lot of it providing food for humanity. And like Sylvia Earle likes to say, it's not just the amount of biomass that we have taken through industrial fishing in the last 100 years out of the ocean, it's the amount of stuff that we're putting into the ocean. This was taken off of my hotel in Bali last Christmas. My husband took me on holiday when we started seeing on social media these people asking for help because waves of plastic were washing on shore. This is not a ghetto beach in Bali. This is in front of the Four Seasons Hotel. And it was probably a couple of kilometers of these, just this thick. So we put a call out on our social media to get people to come and help.
Probably millions of pounds of trash a week show up on these beaches. It's mostly coming from Java. People are just throwing all this trash every day in the rivers, and the ocean has become our garbage dump. So we're taking out all the fish, and we're putting in all our plastics, and we're killing our oceans. This is the end of our planet as we know it if we don't address this problem immediately.
To cleaning the Kodonganan beach with the full of plastic, because it's the continue every year. The Kodonganan beach is like this.
These are three siblings, Gary,
Yes.
Kelly, and Sam, and they are the three heroes that started this whole beach cleanup and Sungai Watch. So why are you here?
Well, you hear a call for action? It's a call for action. So
You just showed up?
yes, showed up.
Holiday here,
I'm on holiday here.
but you decided to calm down.
Absolutely.
The end of the year, this is what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming.
Humanity owes you.
They're pretty amazing, these young people. They're in their 20s. They started doing the beach cleanup, but then they came up with all of these volunteer community work to stop the plastic from entering the ocean in the first place by stopping it in the rivers. And these are children. They're in their 20s. But we're working with them to put pressure on the government of Indonesia. Indonesia wants to be a first world country. They want to be one of the power economies on the planet. But a country that cannot deal with trash collection cannot call itself an economic power, I'm sorry. So we're trying to support them. One of the things that they do is all the plastic that's collected is then sorted and entered into a database, and they know which companies are the culprits in producing all this plastic. And they take the plastic, and through the 3D printing, they produce high-end furniture that then they sell to the resorts to fund their work. They're pretty amazing. So for me, some days get pretty dark. You know, when you hear all the bad news, it's sometimes really hard to just steel yourself up to show up again when I think apathy and just how people don't care to even know or understand is kind of painful. So where do you find the hope? I tell Dominique I build my own hope raft by reminding myself of the heroic people that are doing the work still in the front lines. And the good news is that we know what the solutions are. Professor Carlos Duarte and his colleagues gave us a recipe for how do we restore health and abundance to the ocean in a single generation. They talk about these 7 wedges where we need to stop ocean pollution, we need to start restoring degraded habitats, protecting most species, creating more marine protected areas. I like these wedges because they give us something against which we can measure our progress. And it's pretty hopeful. I'm working with Professor Raf Shami, an economist with the International Monetary Fund. He says that we have lost already 50% of the seagrass meadows on planet Earth. But if we were to restore seagrass meadows, we would be able to capture 18 gigatons of carbon a year, worth about $1 trillion in carbon credits. So he's working to build those types of markets, and that's really hopeful to me. So I understand what my role is. I'm no longer the scientist. I'm no longer publishing in the scientific literature, although I do have an article that just came out on art and science. I know that my job is to make sure that the ocean stays front of mind in the news cycle, because it's difficult to make the environment part of the news every day when we are bombarded with the latest atrocities that our governments are doing. So I take pictures and I make sure that they make it to the cover of magazines. And I am very, very lucky that I work with a number of corporations that are very, very committed to protecting our planet. And Rolex is one of those companies. What I like about Rolex is not just the pretty watch they give me, although it's nice. They pay for a lot of our expedition work, but the thing that's valuable to me is they open their public relations agency to us, and it's massive. And so they make sure that we have CNN on board on our boat, that I have access all the time to the Washington Post and the New York Times to tell these little stories, to try to engage people, donors, public policy, funders into the work that we're all collectively doing.
I knew that I had to use my camera to connect.
Here they come, the mother lode. Hi.
We are trying to shout our message out to the world.
My photographs are just a way of lowering the price of entry into the most important conversation that we can be having, and that is the future of life on planet Earth.
Call to Earth. Protectors of the Sea, only on CNN.
Yeah, we need much more attention on the issues facing our ocean. I would be remiss if I didn't show you a little bit of the work that I do with Indigenous people, because over the past 30 years, I have been lucky enough to spend a lot of time in remote places, sitting around campfires, listening to elders, laughing with women, spending time with these amazing individuals. And it took me a long time to try to explain what I have learned from Indigenous people that I think is valuable as we move forward in an ever more challenging planet. And it's not the tattoos, it's not the ritual, it's not the paint, it's not the feathers, it's not the prayers. What it is an invisible system of values that's pretty universal. It doesn't matter where you go, from the highlands of New Guinea to the Amazon, is pretty much the same. And it centers on 5 ideas that we already practice because our mothers taught us, because we practice them in our churches, because this is how civil society behaves. And it has to do with respect for each other, for the natural world that supports us. We don't go and trash our neighbor's home. It has to do with reciprocity. Today for me, tomorrow for you. I help you, you help me, and I don't take without giving back. Has to do with relationships, with building the communities that are going to allow us to share our ideas, to build friendships and camaraderie, to survive, to share what we know, and to make sure that we are there for each other. But it also has to do with resilience and having that hope to know that we have been in tough moments before. And I like to think that as we see the dismantling of institutions, especially in the United States, institutions that support science, this too shall pass, and we will be called upon to rebuild these institutions for the planet that needs it, with the knowledge for the future that we want to inhabit. So to me, Indigenous people are great teachers. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from them is this idea of enoughness. I couldn't find a word in English to express how their contentment, their fulfillment, their happiness does not come from having material stuff or accolades. It comes from the relationships that they have with each other, from generosity, from being there for others. And I think that's free. That's something we all can start practicing today. I think our mothers would be proud of us. Because if we follow these values, we can build a very different kind of economic model. Professor Kate Raworth, an economist out of the UK, talks about the donut economics. And it goes hand in hand with the planetary boundaries. The light green is the safe and just operational space for humans. And when what we should aspire to is for no human to fall underneath, to fall in the middle of the circle, to lack food or water or justice or a political voice. We all should aspire to have that. And yet, in today's world, that is far from true. But the other boundary that's non-negotiable, of course, it's the ecological ceiling of our planet and what it allows. And as Professor Rockstrom likes to remind us, 9 planetary boundaries, we've already surpassed 7 of them. To me, it's pretty terrifying. I try to talk to people about the concept of irreversibility, irrevocability, without scaring the hell out of each other, right? But I do think that hope is one of the most important tools that we have in our toolkit. I try to think about people that survive Holocaust and accidents and disease, and they are the ones that cling on to hope. Hope is a powerful force. And hope is a choice. I made this book last year, and I wanted to share with others this fear and anxiety that I suffer over what's happening and acknowledge that. And to say, I find tremendous hope in knowing that there's so many other people who care. And that's not enough. We have to do more. One of the bitter parts of this book was the cover, because when I photographed this girl, I didn't know that she was going to become the cover of my book, one of my best-selling photographs. I didn't know that I was going to make money from it. And it felt wrong, to profit from her. So I decided to go back to Ethiopia to find her. And I brought back some of the profits of the book and my work, and I bought medicine and books, and I bought grain and food for the women, and I visited many, many villages, traveled all over the place. And on one of the last days, we were in this market, and I thought I was photographing a group of women, and I thought I should ask if people have seen her, if they know, and I pulled my phone out, and I showed it to the man that was standing next to me, and he looked at me like I'm an idiot, and he's like, it's her. It was the same girl that I was photographing. So I did find her, and now I know her name, and I couldn't clearly communicate to her why I was giving her so much money, but it doesn't matter because I know why. And she's a delight. She's a lovely, lovely girl. She's going to school. She's still beautiful, still unmarried, and made me really feel better knowing that I brought a little hope to her life. Because hope is a practice. Hope is a choice. Whenever we see that something is wrong, that something needs fixing, we can step up and be the ones who fix it. So in my last few minutes, I want to talk to you about a documentary that I just watched, and this is where we all come in. The Glorious Amateurs. For those of you who follow World War II, you know that when our boys were dying in the beaches of Normandy and it all seemed lost, the United States government built a special agency called the OSS, the Office of Special Services. And they conscripted regular Americans, people who had no expertise in military or special operations of any kind, pretty much like the American head of the military, what's his name? He's no expert either. Anyway, these people step up to the plate to do things for which they had no expertise. They became spies, they became informers, they helped win the war. And the moment that we find ourselves now in demands that we all step outside of our areas of comfort to do things that we know nothing about, to become advocates, to speak up, to feel uncomfortable with the things that we don't know and still go and do them. I want to show you a couple of examples. This young man I met in 2021, his name is Titouan Bernicot. I met him because he had created an organization called the Coral Gardeners. He went surfing one day when he was in high school, looked down, discovered that the coral was bleached, asked around, nobody was doing anything about it. So he Googled how to restore the reef. And he started an organization, conscripted all of his classmates, and they built the Coral Gardeners. When I met him, he was just 21. Today, he's 26 years old. He's a Rolex ambassador. He has built one of the largest, most prestigious, best-funded organizations that are doing ocean conservation out there. And he's just a high school dropout. I think Tituan is an example of the kinds of things that we can do when we set our minds to it. And the other one is this gentleman. His name is Jochen Seitz, and when he was 25 years old, he went backpacking as a German backpacker to Africa, and he found a plot of land that was 52,000 square kilometers, and it was devastated by cattle ranching, so he bought it with whatever little money he had. He didn't know that he was going to go on to become the CEO of Puma, and then the CEO of Harley-Davidson, and along with his wife, they have restored this land. And the animals came back once the fences were taken down. Now he has 400 elephants, 6 prides of lions, and recently they released northern white rhinos and black rhinos into the property, animals that had been missing for 40 years. He is the ultimate glorious amateur. He had no business doing this, but he stepped up to do it. And he did it with the help of this gentleman. I was shocked. The day before yesterday, I showed it to a 24-year-old that's training my husband to become a pilot. And I said, do you know who Robert Redford is? And he's like, no. Anyway, Robert Redford. Because Robert did out of Africa, and then he became very passionate about wildlife conservation in Africa. So here's Robert telling us about this place.
In 2003, 8 plots of land that had been neglected and ravaged by overgrazing were bought in the greater Segera area of central Kenya. Left barren and divided after decades of unsustainable livestock and agricultural practices, the wildlife had disappeared. The initial vision from the Zeitz Foundation was to restore this land and create a 50,000-acre wildlife conservancy known as Segera. Now, after 20 years of nurturing, protection, and patience, life has returned to the lands of Segera. Proof that when given a chance, a complex, interdependent ecosystem will thrive. Home again to all who belong. Creatures large and small. Now it's time to take another bold step. Together with our community of stewards and stakeholders, let's show the world what's possible as we transform the heart of Kenya into one of the largest rhino reserves in the world. A beacon of hope. Explore our plan and get involved.
I love that I met him before he passed away, because it's very difficult when Robert Redford tells you that he wants you to carry on with his legacy. So if you see me posting photographs from Africa, that's why. I'm going to finish my talk by sharing this photograph with you. It has nothing to do with anything we're talking about here, but people love it, so I put it up there to get your attention. I've been living in Canada now for 15 years, and I'm learning how to be Canadian. And one of the things that I've learned over the 30-year-long career I've had is that people often think that somebody else is going to step up and do something to right the mess that we find ourselves in. And I came up with an acronym. It's called SELFIE, and it stands for Someone Else is Likely Fixing It, eh? I'm still working on my A. But it is to remind us that nobody's coming to save us. It really is going to come down to each and every one of us becoming glorious amateurs, sharing our expertise, building communities, subscribing to values that keep humanity alive, and remembering that hope is the most powerful force on this planet. I want to thank you all for the work that you all do, and I want you to know that you give me hope. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. And thank you, Dominique. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mitty, for a very inspiring talk.
Do you want your box to stand up?
I'm
No?
good. I can do that.
She's so little.
There's time for a few questions. If you have any questions for Mitty, please go to the microphone. Don't be shy.
And remember, I'm not an oracle. People sometimes ask me questions for which there is no answer.
So it's not really a question, but I wanted to say that first, thank you. I've been following your work for years. I'm also a wildlife photographer. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you because it's so inspiring, and seeing your work really encouraged me to go outside and take pictures, and now I'm partnering with Snow Leopard Trust. So
I've seen your pictures. You're Esther.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful work, Esther. Well done.
Thanks
I
so
follow
much.
you too.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, just thank you very much for everything you're doing.
I'm so glad to see more scientists become storytellers, because we are trained to just work on data and graphs, and my experience is that people just don't connect emotionally with that. So.
Yep.
Stepping outside of our comfort zone to tell stories that may not be as accurate and maybe a little more emotional is important. Thank you, Esther.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your work.
Yeah, thank you for being a model.
Oh, my pleasure. It comes with getting older. No more questions. There's no more photographers. Saurav, no questions from you. Saurav works in the Antarctic. You said doing magma? No. Paleobiology. Did you guys see his talk?
Hi. Thanks for the talk. It was really inspiring. I have a question. How do you think us as scientists can become better storytellers?
I tell you, the first thing that I learned is to not get lost in the details. Because as scientists, we really want to get it right, so we lose the interest of the audience when you boil down what the main point of what you're trying to say is, and don't be afraid of making it a personal thing, because when we make it impersonal, we lose the connection. But now, one of the good things about social media is that there's so many resources for storytelling, for public speaking, to help us all become better communicators. And we need an army of communicators out there, so can't wait to see what you do.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We all know that the social media is basically being pulled under our feet. Mm-hmm. No need to put names here. So how do you see what's happening in the next year and a couple of years? How can we deal with this evolving landscape?
Well, now we can see the past 15 years how Zuckerberg and company duped us, right? They gave us Instagram and Facebook to put up our content for free with a promise that we were going to be able to build a community and have a global conversation with thousands, millions of other people around us. And we did. And for a little while, it worked. Now, the algorithm, you know how it works, Dominique? Elon told us the other day how it works. So if you get a like, you get half a point. If you get a comment, you get 1 point. But if you are able to elicit a debate or an argument, you get 75 points. So those posts that are getting people to argue and fight with each other boil up to the top. And for people like us who care about things like climate and justice and the environment, well, all of those words will get you throttled. So fewer and fewer people get to see your work. So what to do? I'm going back to public speaking, to speaking to real people in real time, and to being back in the regular media. I feel like we have come full circle, and social media is no longer what it used to be. So don't feel pressure, Dominique, to start your Instagram.
Wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Tell us how you organize your photographs.
This is a database question. I have redundancy. So I have 2 towers. We have a server that's 1 petabyte, so they all have triplicate. But yeah, just a hard drive, external hard drive. And then I use Lightroom to catalog. And I organize them by expedition, by location, by date, and with metadata and keynotes, just like you organize your data.
Are you using AI to find things now?
No, I'm not using AI to find things, mostly because I don't have time to learn how to use it. I was telling Dominique, I'm using Claude as a thought partner because it's such a, an impersonal, great way of having a conversation about things I'm curious about that are easier to find when you can ask questions. But I'm also very scared of it. And I know that AI is already stealing the work that we do as creators. And I have a feeling that it's going to have a full circle effect. You know how pirates, when they have one eye patch, is cool and we're all very interested, but then two eye patches are not so cool. And I think we're all going to get tired of these AI-generated content. Two eye patches, not so cool.
Hi, thank you so much for that. It was really nice to see. Just to say, we were 8 friends that started out with science, and 3 of them dropped out to become photographers and really enjoy their life, thanks to also bunking a lot of college. The lectures weren't very good. So it's really nice. So I work on caves, and I also learned how to dive because I thought the same, that there's 70% of the earth I'm not seeing if I don't know how to dive.
Yeah.
The next step would be diving inside caves, so like cenotes. And then I was just wondering, I haven't seen photos from you of it and whether you'd considered it or...
So when I have done my cave diving, I did it as an assistant to Paul Nicklin. So he was the photographer on assignment. He was the one carrying the camera. I found it extremely boring, but maybe it's because I'm not interested in the geology of things. But it is really important. So cave diving, the best thing you can do for yourself is become a rebreather diver before you become a cave diver. And nothing will teach you how to be a good citizen on planet Earth like being a rebreather diver, because you're managing limited gases all the time, and getting it wrong will kill you. So, so get it right. Yeah. And then don't be a hero. Cave diving is very dangerous. So. Go to Mexico. Go to the cenotes. It's a good place to learn.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for your wonderful talk. I was curious how you have developed trust in the communities that you've visited over the years, and how you suggest people who are working on these strategies in places that are not their home countries and their home communities to work to do that with respect and in building trust with those folks there?
That's a great question. Yeah, first of all, you should never show up to a community just by yourself and unannounced. But I think that's part of the magic of belonging to a large scientific community around the world of biologists, anthropologists, field biologists, because I go with them. And they have built decades of trust and relationships, understanding, language, culture. It's all so sensitive. So I always go trying to be of service to the science that's happening, and lending my photographs to all the organizations that open the doors for me. Yeah, don't go by yourself. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the work that you do. I try to remind people that Elon is not going to Mars, right, Dan? Where's Dan? There. We're not going to Mars. And I ask people, do you have your tickets yet? I mean, has he invited you yet? But if he was to invite us to go on his spaceship, we would get an incredible briefing on how that machine would carry us to Mars. And we would understand where the water comes from, how waste is treated, where the food comes from. And we need to understand the same for this spaceship. And I feel like you guys should be the pilots of the spaceship and not the people that are in charge. So carry on, please. And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Mitty.
Thank you.
Quick reminder to the students who sign up for Meet the Plenary. The room has changed. It's in 441. And Mitty will stay around today. If you cross by her, feel free to stop.
Chers invités, veuillez vous diriger vers votre salle d'atelier. La présentation débute maintenant.
Dear guests, please proceed to your breakout room. The presentation begins now.